Welcome to Your Best Unleashed. This channel is designed to be able to help empower you and anchor you to be your best mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I am your host, Stephanie Jackman, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me today. We are going to talk about many things on Your Best Unleashed. So, if you have not already done so, I would like to ask that you push the subscribe button and you also share our channel with your community. All right, so let's get started today. Um, Oftentimes, when we're speaking to ourselves in a way that's pretty negative, and no one speaks to us more than we speak to ourselves. And so today we're going to be spending some time talking about understanding and combating negative self talk. So, for today's purposes, when I talk about negative self talk, the definition that we're going to use is basically that inner critic or that inner voice that we all have that comments on what we're doing, either good or bad. And it also causes us to be able to have false decisions about ourselves. And often it causes us to self sabotage. So we all have that voice. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about where that inner voice and where negative self talk originates. What's the root of it? So there's five roots that we're going to highlight for today's broadcast. The first one is going to be fear, right? So the first root cause is fear. And fear is basically, if I were to use a acronym, it's false evidence appearing real. So there is no evidence showing or proving that we can't do a thing. But in our mind, we have created this narrative that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not the right pedigree. Okay, so we have this fear. The second root cause of where negative self talk comes from is past traumas. So, trauma exposure, that trauma can be mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, is past traumas, right? Now, the third root cause of um, negative self talk can be environmental. Now, what I like to say is that oftentimes trauma and environmental can link hand in hand together. Okay. So, environmental is around the environment that we grew up in. Environmental factors can be the company that we keep. It is key and critical that we are surrounding ourselves around positive people. Okay. As children, how we were raised, what we heard. So, some examples of that to where perhaps maybe we weren't raised in an environment that it might not have been the most healthy healing approach. So, sometimes we've heard things like, you're going to be just like you're no good and fill in the blank. Okay. Or it may be, you're going to grow up and you're going to do the same thing that you've always done, right? So those negative things, when we're talking about children, for those of us that are parents and grandparents and caregivers of young people, it is key and critical that we speak positive things over them, right? Because as children, we grow up and we live what we learn. Okay. So the fourth one, in terms of root causes of where negative self talk can come from, is depression. Depression can really cause us to look at things from a deficit or an inadequate place versus a positive place. And then, lastly, the next place of the root cause of where negative self talk can stem from is anxiety. Anxiety will tell us and give us the message of, I don't have enough within me to be able to handle what is getting ready to come my way. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about depression and anxiety on your best unleashed in episodes to come. All right. So as we're looking at the roots of negative self-talk, along with that, then comes this notion of we create these automatic negative thoughts. And human behavior is designed where it is normal and oftentimes to our deficit to where we will gravitate and hold on to the negative. Okay. So we are 30 days into 2024. Many of us have set professional goals, personal goals, physical goals for ourselves. And so 30 days in, perhaps some of us have already talked ourselves out of not being able to accomplish that professional goal. So that professional goal may be for 2024, I am going to begin to launch and start my own business. For 2024, I am going to perhaps go back to school. I'm middle aged, but I'm going to go back to school. I'm an empty nester. I'm going back to school. Okay. It may be that we have embarked on some physical goals where we are going to work out 4 to 5 times a week in a 7-day time period. Okay. So, whatever those goals are that we have set for 2024, automatic negative thoughts will oftentimes cause us to think that we don't have what it takes. Now, you may be saying, Stephanie, what do you mean when you say automatic negative thoughts? I'll give you the definition of what we're going to use for today. Those are involuntary habitual patterns of thinking that causes us to think disastrously or catastrophically, meaning I have the perception that if I do this, if I leap into this, if I jump into this, I don't have what it takes. So again, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'll never get that promotion. Okay, those are all automatic negative thoughts. And those really stem from, again, those 5 root causes of either they're embedded through fear, through past traumas, through environmental factors, depression, or anxiety. Now, I brought a couple of guests with me to kind of give you a visual of what I mean when I say automatic negative thoughts. So let me bring my little guests in here. So these little creatures right here are literally ants. These are ants, right? ANTS. And that's the acronym that we're going to use for automatic negative thought. Okay. And from a literal standpoint, right? What do we know about ants? Right? What do we know about them? We know that they work together, they work in teamwork, right? That's the same thing as our automatic negative thoughts. They will work as a team to attempt to work against us to be able to move forward in that next thing. And again, we all have automatic negative thoughts. One thing that you'll see on your best unleashed is that I will be open, honest, and transparent with you. So in 2024, one of my professional goals was to start your best unleashed, to start a YouTube channel, to be able to help give all of you out there skills to help anchor you to be your best self, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So, an automatic negative thought or an ant that came to me in this process and in this journey was, Stephanie, nobody's going to come and listen to you. Stephanie, are you sure you want to do this? Stephanie, nobody's going to be subscribe. You're going to talk to yourself. Stephanie, you're never going to have the views. Okay. So I had to be able to combat those automatic negative thoughts, the ants. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, again, what else do we know literally about ants? So, first, we've stated that they work together as a team, right? Next, what do we know about them? That they are collaborative with each other. So the queen ant, she doesn't have to say anything because the others know what their job and their responsibility is. Well, that's how our automatic negative thoughts are as well, that they're collaborative, meaning they build on top of each other, right? They build on top of each other. So, for those of you that may be considering moving out in an endeavor to be able to apply for that promotion, or those of you that are out there that are beginning to have perhaps pursue academic enhancement, so getting um, going to school, going to college, taking up a trade, all of those things. Ants, automatic negative thoughts, they can be collaborative to where they will build off of each other. Okay, so you don't have the time. Okay. You don't have the finances. You're not intelligent enough. You're going to be in the class with 20-year-olds. Your brain is not as sharp as it used to be. Okay. So we have to begin to combat those things, right? Lastly, what else do we know about ants that is very similar to automatic negative thoughts? Is that, again, they cluster together. So ants cluster together and they're very organized. Okay. And again, that's how our automatic negative thoughts are. They will cluster together, they're organized, and they will cause us stagnation and paralysis in terms of being able to move forward. All right. So these are our literal ants that I brought with us today, but they are symbolic and relative to our automatic negative thoughts. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how do we combat those things. So I'm going to give you three just basic tips. Okay, basic tips. So the first way that we can look at combating automatic negative thoughts is we have to catch it. Okay, so we have to be self aware and we have to catch our automatic negative thoughts, our ants. So we have to catch it. How do we catch it? Self awareness. We have to be self aware. Okay, we have to be mindful. Another word for self aware is mindful. We have to be mindful in terms of how we are thinking. Okay, so we have to be mindful of those thoughts. How are we thinking? Okay. Another word for self aware is we have to be deliberate and intentional. Listen to ourselves in terms of what we're saying to ourselves. Remember, I said when we first started, no one talks to us more than we talk to ourselves. So we have to be mindful in regards to that. Okay. So we have to catch it. Here is one tip, and here is one way that you may be able to catch it. Many of us, over 90% of us, are visual learners. Okay. So you may have to visually see a red stop sign to be able to stop yourself. Stephanie, stop thinking that no one will view your best unleashed. Stop thinking that you have reached an age to where you're not able to go back to school. Stop thinking, oh, my boss never acknowledges what I do. They always acknowledge someone else. So it doesn't really make sense for me to be able to go for that promotion. Okay. Oftentimes I hear this one: nobody really cares about me. I'm always there for other people and no one is there for me. Okay. So, how do we stop that pattern of thinking? You may visually have to see yourself with a stop sign and catch yourself. Okay. We call that thought stopping. Another way is you're in a room. You're in a room with hundreds of people. You don't even know how you got in that space. Okay, someone may have invited you, you got an invitation, you don't know who sent you there. You're in the room with esteemed individuals, dignitaries, and what ends up happening? The first thing we say to ourselves, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here. What am I doing here? Okay. So you're in a space with all these other people. And these are the automatic negative thoughts that you're telling yourself, or the ants that you're telling yourself, right? So oftentimes I will tell individuals just discreetly have a signal to be able to thought stop. Some people, I tell them, put a rubber band on. As soon as you hear yourself doing it, catch it, okay, and stop it. And then reframe your thinking. So you can say to yourself, well, I'm here for a reason. I got the invitation for a reason. Now that I'm here in the room, why not just stand back and listen to what these individuals have to say? I can learn something. Okay. So you can always reframe those negative thoughts. Now, it's key and critical to remember that this is the long haul. Okay. This is the long haul. All right. Second one. So the first one we talked about is catching it. You got to catch and be self aware. The second one is check it, check your thoughts, right? What do I mean by that? Stephanie, what do you mean by check your thoughts? Is there any accuracy or truth to what you are thinking about the situation or yourself? Okay. So, is there any evidence to support what you're thinking or what you're telling yourself? Again, the example that I can use is no one cares about me. I'm there for everybody else, but no one is there for me. Now, the red flag for me, the stop for me is when I hear absolutes like nobody and never. Okay. So, how do we check it? First step, perhaps there is some truth to what you're saying. Maybe nobody is ever there for you. Okay. So, what's the worst case scenario? Nobody's ever there for you. You're always there for other people. So, the worst case scenario could be perhaps you need to find new friends because the relationship is not reciprocal. Okay. So, perhaps you need to find new friends. Or is the scenario true? Maybe it could be true based upon the fact of maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper to think about why is it that I always feel the need to be there for other people when there's other resources for those people. Okay. So think about that. Then checking it again. Perhaps there is an alternative explanation of why you feel that other people are never there for you. So, what's the alternative? Say you're married. Okay. I'm married. Me, Stephanie, I'm married. If I want my husband to listen to me, there's a couple of things that I know. I can't say that he's never there for me when I'm approaching him and wanting to have a deep emotional conversation and connection with him when a couple of things are happening. One, when he's watching soccer or European football. Okay. Two, when he's watching cricket. I'm not getting much out of him during that time period. Okay. So, when are you connecting with your spouse in order for them to be there for you emotionally? Okay. You may think, I'm always there for my best friend, but she's never there for me. When are you approaching her? What timing are you looking to connect and chat with her? All right. So there may be people available for you, but when is your timing? And is there someone, perhaps the alternative explanation is you had a friend, but perhaps you all are no longer friends anymore and they were there for you. So now you have to find different resources. Or You can speak to your mom. You can speak to another girlfriend. You can have someone in your community, in your social circle. Perhaps you need to seek a therapist, or perhaps the individuals that are there for you, they're telling you what you need to hear as opposed to what you want to hear. So, therefore, our automatic negative thoughts will tell us nobody is ever there for me. I'm always there for someone else. Okay. So there's always this alternative, perhaps, explanation for it than how we can think. Next, after that, so again, we're checking it. We're checking our thoughts. So we've looked, perhaps there is some truth to what we're thinking. Perhaps there's an alternative to what we're thinking. And then next, if we're checking it, let's look at this one. If something similar was to happen to your closest friend, your best friend. So your best friend was to come to you and say to you, Stephanie, I just feel like no one is there for me. What would you tell them? If your child came to you, your 18, 19, 20-year-old child, daughter or son came to you and said, Mom, I just feel like no one is there for me. Okay, what would you tell them? Would you tell them something negative that you would tell yourself? Or would you tell them something positive? Right? So when I say check it, the same thing that you would tell your child or you would tell your closest and dearest friend is key and critical that you also tell yourself that message. Okay. So moving and segueing into changing it, changing the negative self-talk, right? So we first have to catch it. We first have to catch it. Then we have to check it or challenge it, right? Is it true or accurate? Is there perhaps an alternative reasoning for this? Okay. Or if my child or my best friend came to me and said, I don't think I'm equipped and ready to do A, B, and C, what would you say to them? So here we are. The third one, we have to then change it. So if your child or your best friend came to you and said, I don't think I am equipped or good enough to be able to do this, our natural response is going to be one of kindness, compassion, and empathy. So, one way to change and overcome and combat our negative self talk is we have to practice being kinder to ourselves. We have to practice demonstrating empathy and compassion and extending grace to ourselves, the same way that we extend that to our children, the same way we extend that to our best friends, the same way we extend that to our husbands and our wives and our parents, is the same way that we have to be kind to be able to speak to ourselves in a better way. Okay. So changing it, that's key and critical. The next way to be able to look at changing those patterns of negative self talk, right? Do you have an accountability partner? Do you have someone that's holding you accountable to be able to embark on some of those 2024 goals? I do, right? I have a couple of people that I am accountable to, right? And that holds me accountable. Hence, your best unleashed. Okay. So you have to be able to have accountability partners. It's important that you have thought partners. All right. People that you can run ideas off. Perhaps in this season, people that perhaps may believe in you more at this time than you believe in yourself. And that's okay. Because again, it's a journey, it's not a sprint. This is the long haul game. Okay. So, what does that mean as an accountability partner? That may mean that you have a mentor and a mentee relationship. You're the mentee, you have the mentor. Okay. It's a reciprocal relationship. They pour into you, you pour into them. Right. So, that's one way. Next, you may have from a business or a professional standpoint, you may need a professional or an executive coach to be able to hold you accountable, not to tell you what to do, but offer you suggestions and recommendations. Okay. And then you also may need a therapist. You can have them all. Okay. You can have a mentor. You can have a professional coach. You can have a therapist because all three of those accountability partners and thought partners, they're not one and the same. Right. So, again, changing our thoughts, we can need collaborative assistance with that. Again, remember the ants, they're collaborative in their approach. Okay. Then next, changing it. Some of you are out there saying, Stephanie, I have so much going on in my head. I have so many thoughts, negative thoughts going on in my head. That all sounds good, but I don't know about that. Well, again, human behavior says that we have a tendency to believe and hone in on the negative versus the positive. So it is key and critical that we have to begin to start saturating ourselves with positive things, saturating ourselves around positive people. Again, having a mentor, having an executive coach or professional coach, and having a therapist, all three of those individuals may believe in you more than you believe in yourself in this season. And that's okay. So, oftentimes I will share with people it's okay for you to have and utilize affirmations. Okay. Affirmations are just positive sayings and positive quotes that you might get from leadership books that you may hear and read in other texts and contexts. Okay. For me, I will say to you that I utilize scripture and I apply it to my life on a daily basis. Okay. So using affirmations, put them everywhere, put them on post it notes, in your bathroom, in your car. If you were to see my desk, you would see post it notes all over my desk. Okay. And they're saying positive things in order to be able to help keep me focused on things that I need to do when some of those ants start to creep in. Because remember, none of us are exempt. We all have them. Okay. So some of you, again, are saying, Stephanie, affirmations aren't going to work for me. All right. So, from a visual standpoint, they're not going to work for me. I've tried it before. Okay. So, then again, perhaps you may need to have someone that really believes in you and that's your number one cheerleader and is rooting for you in your corner. Put them auditory. Okay. That person's voice, or perhaps even your voice. Record those affirmations and then listen to them in those times when those automatic negative thoughts come. Okay. So, again, remember how we think can often create roadblocks to us being able to move forward. So, as we wrap up today, all right, with your best unleashed, I really hope that you found these tips helpful. Again, we're going to recap really quickly. All right. So, again, we all have that negative self-talk. That's that inner critic and that inner voice that tells us how to feel and how to think about what we're getting ready to do, what we're getting ready to embark on. And oftentimes it causes us to sabotage, right? So that's the definition that we were working with today around today's broadcast. Now, in regards to that, okay, there's always a root in terms of where some of those thoughts are stemming from. Again, we talked about fear, the acronym of fear, false evidence appearing real. We talked about trauma exposure, whether mentally, physically, emotionally, or spiritual trauma that we have been exposed to. And we've all been exposed to some type of trauma in our lives. If we're living and breathing, we've been exposed to some type of trauma. Okay. Then the third root cause of where some of that negative talk can come from is environmental factors, our social environment, the environment in which we were raised, who we're hanging out with, the messages that we received as children. Again, remember I said we live what we learn. So what we hear and what we take in terms of our ears and our eyes are all contributing factors to what could contribute to negative self-talk and automatic negative thoughts. And then the last two, in terms of the root cause, are depression and anxiety. Both of them will cause us to think deficiency based, right? Not good enough. And then also not having enough resources and human capital within me to be able to handle what is getting ready to come before me, right? So then as a result of that, we then have these automatic negative thoughts that come, or the ants. These are intrusive, involuntary, habitual thoughts that come that are often negative, and they basically try to create disastrous thoughts and paralyze us to be able in being able to move forward to pursue that next chapter or that next new thing, right? So we have to be able to combat those things. And those three areas and three categories that we talked about was catching it, checking it, and changing it. Remember? Okay. So visualize stopping it. All right. When you begin to think it, visualize stopping it. All right. You're in a room with a whole bunch of other people. You could even be by yourself. Stop it. Okay. Just discreetly, you got the rubber band, stop, and then regroup. Check it. Okay. Is this accurate? Is this just me in my own head overthinking things? All right. Is there some truth to what's going on? And then how do I modify that? Okay. Or what would I say to my child, my son or my daughter, or my spouse, or my best friend, or my mom, or one of my closest and dearest friends, if they were feeling the same way that I'm feeling? And what would you say? You would be kind. You would show empathy. Okay. You would show compassion. So again, we are talking to ourselves more than we speak to others and more than we're talking to anybody else. So be kind to yourself. That's one way of changing it, being kind. And then also looking at the use of affirmations, whether they're visual in our space, whether they're auditory in our space. Okay. All of those things are key and critical. So I want to thank you for taking this opportunity to join me today on Your Best Unleashed. Our goal is to be able to help anchor you with just basic concrete tools to be your best self. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. That's the goal of this channel. So if you have not already done so, I hope that you would subscribe. I hope that you would share this information with your community. Okay. And remember, overcoming and combating negative self talk, it's about the journey, it's about the long haul. So it's important that we are consistent and remember that practice makes progress. I want to thank you all for joining me today. As we move into next month, we will be looking at February, and we will be looking at Black History Month. So we will come back to you on Your Best Unleashed, and we will have information, and we will provide a series on mental health and the Black community. And if you have not already seen, I am very, very passionate about helping and assisting and providing tools for you to be your best unleashed. So I hope that you will join us in February for Black History Month, where we're talking about mental health within the Black community. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.